everyone, welcome back to Data Part 2. In Data Part 1, we looked at the Acadience graphic that showed the benchmark scores for grades K through 6. And we also went on to the M-Class website and had you look at how to find your class, where the different measures were. Well, today we're going to do a little bit more with that data. So thinking about what does your data say, I want you to read your data and identify your Tier 1 needs and successes. So what does that mean? Well, just so we all have a common language, Tier 1 is instruction that all of your students receives. It is your core, it is your main curriculum. Tier 1 is the instruction all of your students are receiving from you. In contrast, Tier 2 may be during an intervention period. A Tier 2 instruction may be given by an inclusion support teacher, a gifted support teacher, a reading specialist. Tier 3 would be even more specialized instruction, such as ABA therapy, possibly a type of pull-out enrichment activity, something like that, that is only targeted to a very small group of students. So Tier 1 is everybody. So looking at your data, you can identify your needs, what may be lacking in the whole group, and successes, something that you're doing really strong. What data do you have to do that? We looked at M-Class, but I also want you to consider STAR data. What is it telling me? Your data will tell you what needs and successes that you have in your core instruction based on how your students are responding to that instruction. I usually say, as a general rule of thumb, if 80% or below of your students are struggling or coming up with not very strong scores on something, then that tells me that that is something that needs to be strengthened in Tier 1 instruction. Whatever the reason for it, it needs to be strengthened right now. Successes, maybe if almost maybe 90% of your students are doing really great on one measure, that's a big success, and that's a practice you want to continue to replicate over and over, maybe sharing it with some members of your team. Finally, how can I use this information? In this video, which gets a little bit more specific in the measures than video 1, I'm going to explain what the different measures say and then where you can go to learn more, to find resources and specific strategies for implementing either a change, a remediation, or an enhancement of your core instruction and what you're already doing. I'm sure you're aware of all these different measures. I just wanted to reiterate what they are, what they stand for, and what they tell us. Our oral reading fluency is in grades 5 down through grade 1. I started at the top with this, and then I'm going to kind of work backwards down to kindergarten. Oral reading fluency is the speed students are reading, how many words they're able to read correctly in 1 minute. Oral reading accuracy, every time they do an oral reading fluency check, they will also be measured in accuracy. Accuracy is how many words they are reading correct in proportion to all of the words in the passage. Retell is when they tell about the story. It's a measure of comprehension. Down in KN1, we have nonsense word fluency. They have to read short vowel nonsense words, and they are measured by both the number of sounds they get correct and how many whole words they're able to blend together. Finally, in kindergarten, there is a phoneme segmentation measure, which is a sound only that they can demonstrate that they are able to segment the words and isolate those sounds. All right, so on the DIBELS website, they put them kind of in that order: fluency, accuracy, retell, days, depending on the grade level. Personally, I don't love how they set that up, because when you're considering your first targeted area, you want to think of it like a hurdle. And you want to focus on the hurdle in front of you. You can't think about the hurdle, 2 hurdles in front of you, until you've overcome the hurdle and the first hurdle there. So accuracy is always first. Accuracy leads everything. So we're going to look at the accuracy part of the data first. Why is that? because, you have to be practicing something correctly before you can practice it fast. I always equate it to math practice. You could practice 2 plus 2 equals 5, and you could fill up a whole piece of paper with 2 plus 2 equals 5. You did it fast. You got maybe 30 problems done in 1 minute, but if you're practicing it wrong, it is really not purposeful practice. It's worthless, basically. So let's look back over to the Dibbles website. Let's look at, I have a 4th grade class pulled up here. I want to remind you that, let's see if I can move this up a little bit. There we go. So I have the students' names covered. Over here you have your middle of the year composite, fluency, accuracy, retell, and days. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to start at accuracy, and I'm going to flip my data around so I have the students ranked low to high. The goal is 97. I see 1 student below benchmark. I see 2 students right at the green benchmark, and then everyone else is above. Out of 26 students, there is only 1 student that is below benchmark, and 2 students right at that 97%. So remember, your data doesn't just have to tell you needs. Your data can also tell you successes. I love this data. This is fantastic. What this tells me is that this teacher is teaching those word reading skills really well. The students are practicing their spelling words. The students have solid decoding skills from the primary center. The students have mastered the code and are confident to move on to focusing on fluency practice. So again, when you think of the hurdle, we've overcome accuracy. Let's move on to fluency. I'm going to sort my fluency. This tells a different story. Let's count how many students are below benchmark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I see the goal is 103, and I notice this student is right there. So I'm going to count him because he just barely scraped by. 10. 10 out of 26 students are below benchmark on fluency. What does that tell me? That tells me that I need to work in some practices in Tier 1 for fluency. That magic number of 80%, I'd say, that we want to get our students to benchmark. There's only 62% of students at benchmark in this particular class. That is not an intervention problem. That is a Tier 1 practice that we need to put into place. So I have a slide for accuracy. I'm going to skip over that one because that's not a hurdle I need to jump. Let's look at oral reading fluency. How can we strengthen this? Time on text, repeated reading, and explicit fluency instruction. If you find in your data that your students are demonstrating a need for strengthened oral reading fluency instruction, I encourage you to find the fluency instruction video and watch that next as your self-directed study. Let's keep going. Say we've crossed that hurdle of fluency. What's next? Comprehension. Let's head to retell. Where's my retell score? Right here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students below benchmark on retell. Remember, there's 26 students overall. I have to get my calculator out to figure out these percentages. So we're at about 77% accurate, or 77% benchmark on the retell. I don't really feel like that's very strong there. I think that data is telling me that there is a need. Remember, retell is a measure of comprehension. Retell can be strengthened with certain instructional routines in your classroom, as well as time on text with purposeful practice. If you look at your retell scores and you find that your students are demonstrating below probably 80% proficient or 80% benchmarked on that, I encourage you to direct yourself to the video that looks at instructional practices, student groupings, and possibly even looking at module preparation protocols. So as you go in to your modules and you're planning, you're making sure that you are putting your focus on the correct groupings and instructional strategies. All right, I'm going to head into nonsense word fluency and phoneme segmentation in a moment. So I will be dismissing the upper level teachers grades 2 through 5, but I do want to just draw your attention to the STAR scores really quickly. The easiest way to get to your STAR scores are to go to that asdlopes.org site, find the orange one, click on it. It's going to take you here to Renaissance, log in. I have a ton of reports available because I have all of the reports for all of the grades for all of the schools. So you're just going to look a little bit different. You want to go to reports. I always go to STAR assessment, or I have administrator as a choice because I get to see everyone's. What I find really helpful is something like the STAR screening report, instructional planning report, maybe a parent report to go home. This data can be used to group your students. If you're, you're seeing that a large group of them really seem to be reading very quickly or mastering the content, that's an option where you might be like, oh, I noticed that these 5 students on their STAR reports were reading 2 grade levels above. I'm going to give them a little bit more independent time. Or I noticed that these students are right on track. Maybe we'll do a reading class, and then when they go home, I'm going to ask them when they have a little more time to read this on their own. So thinking about how you can start at the highest level of independence for your students that you think they can achieve based on their need. All right, so let me head back over to the next category. Again, if you teach 2, 3, 4, or 5, this is not relevant to you unless you care to watch it so you can learn a little bit about nonsense word fluency. So I'm going to head over to my M class and look at APC. And let me pick a teacher here. All right, I am in a first grade M-Class site. I am in the middle of the year data. So I'm going to head to my correct letter sounds. Okay, there are 21. Oh my, these are upside down. Counted them all up, there are 26. If I count the number of students that are below benchmark in correct letter sounds, there are 11 students below benchmark. If I use my calculator, divide 11 into 26, that's 42, which tells me there are 58% of the students are at or above benchmark. That's a very telling data point. What does that tell me? I need to work on accuracy, building letter sound knowledge. So nonsense word fluency, same kind of practice that you would look at with oral reading accuracy. Your foundational skill instruction, your high frequency words, your word lines for your automatic word recognition. If you see your students are demonstrating a need for additional Tier 1 instruction in nonsense word fluency, again, if less than 80% of your class is at or above benchmark, I encourage you to head to the word building video, the sound spelling video, or the high frequency word instruction video. So I just pulled up a whiteboard here to recap. Let's see how I can put this. If less than 80% of your class has reached benchmark in oral reading fluency, watch the fluency video. If less than 80% of your class has reached benchmark in reading accuracy, watch the word building or multi-syllable card video. Also, watch the high frequency word video. If less than 80% of your class has reached benchmark in retail, watch the instructional routines video.